Welcome to another Scriptural Reasoning session hosted by the Open University under the direction of Dr. Jessica Giles. I'm Michael Wakelin and I'll be acting as facilitator, but as usual the real expertise will be provided by our Scriptural Reasoning practitioners who will introduce themselves shortly. Scriptural Reasoning puts Scripture at the heart of the conversation. 3 texts from the Hebrew Scriptures, the Qur'an and the New Testament are chosen on a specific theme. They are read out loud, recited in the original language where possible, and then discussed in turn and in depth with representatives from the 3 faiths. For our session today, we've selected texts on the subject of reconciliation, relevant to a world ridden with so many conflicts and divisions. But before we get to the text, I'm going to ask the panel to very briefly introduce themselves. So first up, Monawar.
Imam Munawar Hussain, Muslim teacher at Eton College.
And Catherine.
My name's Catherine Ogle and I'm a Christian priest and I've spent a lifetime of ministry in parishes and cathedrals.
Trey.
I'm Trey Hall. I'm a Christian minister and I'm Director of Evangelism and Growth for the Methodist Church in Britain.
Alia.
Alia Azam, Interfaith Coordinator of the Al-Khoy Foundation.
And Adam.
I'm the Rabbi of St. Albans Masorti Synagogue and also Director of Strategy for Masorti Judaism.
And Miriam.
I'm Miriam Laurie and I'm a Rabbi at Kehillat Nashera in Boreham Wood.
So, friends, shall we begin with the words from the Jewish scriptures, which are found in Genesis, chapter 33, verses 1 to 7. And Rabbi Adam, if you'll graciously read us the Hebrew, and then Alia, will you read the English translation? And I'd like all of us around the table to pick up just one word or phrase that really strikes you as particularly interesting. And then Rabbi Miriam will give a short introduction to the passage. So, Rabbi Adam.
והוא עבר לפניהם, וישתחו ארצה 7 פעמים, עד גישתו, עד אחיו. וירוץ עשיו לקראתו, ויחבקהו, ויפול על צוואריו, וישקהו, ויבכו. וישא את עיניו, וירא את הנשים, ואת הילדים, ויאמר מי אלה לך? ויאמר הילדים אשר חנן אלוהים את עבדך. ותיגשנה השפחות הנה וילדיהן, ותשתחוונה. ותיגש גם לאה וילדיה, וישתחוו, ואחר ניגש יוסף ורחל, וישתחוו. ויאמר, מי לך כל המחנה הזה, אשר פגשתי? ויאמר, למצוא חן בעיני אדוני. ויאמר עשיו, יש לי רב, אחי יהי לך אשר לך. ויאמר יעקב, אל נא, אם נא, מצאתי חן בעיניך, ולקחת מנחתי מידי. כי על כן ראיתי פניך, כראות פני אלוהים, ותרצני. קח נא את ברכתי אשר הובאה לך, כי חנני אלוהים, וכי יש לי חול, ויבשר בו, ויקח. ויאמר, נישאה ונלכה, ואלך לנגדך. ויאמר אליו, אדוני, יודע כי הילדים רכים, והצאן והבקר עלות עלי, ודפקום יום אחד, ומתו כל הצאן. יעבור נא אדוני לפני עבדו, ואני את נחליה, לאיתי לרגל המלאכה, אשר לפני, ולרגל הילדים, עד אשר אבוא אל אדוני שעירה. ויאמר עשיו, אציגה נא עמך, מן העם אשר איתי, ויאמר למה זה אמצא חן בעיני אדוני. וישוב ביום ההוא עשיו לדרכו שעירה. ויעקב נשא סוכותה, ויבן לו בית, ולמקנהו עשה סוכות, על כן קרא שם המקום סוכות.
Thank you very much. And Ali, would you read the English translation and give us the chance to select a word or phrase?
He himself went on ahead and bowed low to the ground 7 times until he was near his brother. Esau ran to greet him. He embraced him, and falling on his neck, he kissed him, and they wept. Looking about, he saw the women and the children. Who, he asked, are these with you? He answered, the children with whom God has favored your servant. Then the maids with their children came forward and bowed low. Next Leah with her children came forward and bowed low. And last, Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed low. And he asked, "What do you mean by all this company which I have met?" He answered, "To gain my Lord's favour." Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Let what you have remain yours." But Jacob said, "No, I pray you, if you would do me this favour, accept from me this gift. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God, and you have received me favourably. Please accept my present which has been brought to you, for God has favoured me, and I have plenty." And when he urged him, he accepted. And Esau said, "Let us start on our journey, and I will proceed at your pace." But he said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that their flocks and the herds which are nursing are a care to me. If they are driven hard a single day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord go on ahead of his servant, while I travel slowly at the pace of the cattle before me and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir." Then Esau said, "Let me assign to you some of the men who are with me." But he said, "Oh no, my Lord is too kind to me." So Esau started back that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed on to Succoth and built a house for himself and made stalls for his cattle. And that is why the place was called Succoth.
Thank you, Alia. Now, Miriam, would you like to share your short introduction?
Yeah, well, the background to this starts at least 20 years earlier, probably more, when our two main characters here, Jacob and Esau, were twins in their mother's womb, and they fought so much that she had a very uncomfortable pregnancy and went to seek a prophecy which told her that there are two nations inside her womb, and the older one will end up serving the younger one, the older one being Esau, or Esav in Hebrew, and the younger one being Yaakov, or Jacob. And then we skip a little bit further to the boys being presumably teenagers, and Jacob, encouraged by his mother, Rebecca, tricks his twin brother out of his blessing that he's entitled to as the oldest child. And it's a really heartfelt scene where his brother screams out in pain and vows to kill Jacob as soon as their father has passed away. So Rebecca packs up Jacob and says, "Run away, go to my brother, he'll keep you safe, and come back when all of this has calmed down." But Jacob ends up living with his uncle Laban for 20 years, and in that time marries 4 wives and ends up with, at this stage, 12 of his 13 children. And so 20 years have passed between this death threat and the scene that we're in now, with no phones, no email, no social media, and all of that simmering resentment and the memories which, could either die down or can boil up even more. And I think, as so often is the case when safety is involved, the passions are raised even higher. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen when these two brothers meet again. Will it go well or will it not? And there's, I think, ambivalence in the text. I'm looking forward to exploring that together. One last thing that happens before, 3 things that happen before the text starts. Jacob has 3 strategies in approaching his brother. He sends gifts, number 1. Secondly, he prepares to fight, so he plans for the worst. He splits up his camp, so if one side was killed, the other side might survive. And thirdly, he prays. And one of our commentators say that's a good 3-fold strategy for any problem in life. Prepare for the best, prepare for the worst, and pray.
Thank you very much. And let's hear from you now, each one in turn, what word or phrase you've picked out. Can I start with you, Trey?
I have plenty.
Oh, not plenty of words, that's the phrase. I have plenty. Monawa.
Bowed.
Okay. Adam?
Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God.
Yeah. Catherine?
I also have bowed.
Okay. And Alia?
My Lord's favour.
Okay. And Miriam?
Built a house for himself.
Well, let's kick off with bowed then, since that was a popular choice. So, Catherine, do you want to start a conversation?
Yes, and it in a way links back to a previous conversation we've had about us being physical creatures and spiritual creatures, physical and spiritual. And I was just really struck reading this again, how he approaches humbly. So whatever's going to happen, he's doing the humble thing. He's trying to make it work. And he bows low. And that may have been a difficult thing to do or not. And it might have been sincere or not. But I was just really struck because I think sometimes when you do the thing physically that you know you ought to do, it actually changes you in the process and it becomes genuine, even if you didn't mean it to be genuine. So sometimes something in reconciliation is unthinkable, like extending your hand. But if you do it, you might think, oh, it works. Something good has happened. So he bows low, which is a good sign, I think.
And something I didn't say in the introduction is that the night before this, he'd wrestled an angel and been injured by it. So he was limping. And so something in him was humbled or lowered, whether he chose it or not.
Manuel, was that your reason for picking bowed?
Well, it reminded me of, every time I meet my father, I bow and I kiss his hand. Or I meet a spiritual guide or a teacher, an important, significant person, out of humility and respect and veneration and honor of that person and the knowledge that they carry and the example they set, we bow down and kiss their hand. And it just, for me, it's like if we did more bowing down and actually were a bit more humble and had more humility, there are more chances of actually making friendships and reconciling differences than if we were proud and boastful and so on. So that's what touched me about that part.
It can be seen as a sign of weakness, can't it? Bowing low before someone. So do you think that was partly
therein is the power? Sorry to interrupt you, Michael, but therein is the power. Being a servant leader, as it were.
I think we're being too generous to Jacob. I'm afraid to say Jacob is a cynical actor. He's a trickster. Whatever he's doing it because it's a strategy. I don't know if there's any sincerity whatsoever in this gesture. He's not really changed his ways, has he? I think the end of the story is the most important part, which is that he says to his brother, now having reconciled, "Great, we'll go back to your place. We'll build a life together." And Esau says, "Great, I'll go at your pace." Esau does everything to be accommodating to Jacob, and Jacob says, "Oh well, actually, we're going really slow, so I'll catch up with you. You go there," and then he ghosts him. He goes somewhere else entirely, and he never goes back. He never goes to see his brother. He betrays him once again.
I mean, it is interesting that Jacob is the trickster. And I, again, like we were talking about the Apostle Paul, I sort of identify with Jacob. I have been like,
That's worrying, Trey.
It is, I know, but it's true. There's this sense of like talking about reconciliation and how we make amends for the things that we have done wrong, right? How we repent, how we offer that. And I guess in Jewish and Christian life, there is a sense that it's not enough just to ask forgiveness. There's this sense of like, I have to change something, right? And so even Jacob's gift, this is why I picked out like, I have plenty. His gift didn't seem to come from a place of, it wasn't going to hurt him, right? It wasn't like this gift after all, I stole your birthright. I tricked you, but here I come. I've got plenty, but please take this gift. It wasn't anything that was going to actually affect him. It was just, it seems like from the text, I've got plenty, but here's a gift for you. And I was wondering about true reconciliation and a repentance or a reparation that actually means something, that actually requires a sacrifice. It's all well and good to sort of do diplomatic posturing, but am I changed in this effort of reconciliation?
Why is Esau nice to him?
Esau's always nice. Esau really gets the bad deal in the tradition, I think.
I agree with you, and our commentators just make him out to be so much worse than the text itself.
Completely unfairly.
I think you're both being a little cynical.
Oh, tell us.
No, I mean, I hope we'll get into the text, but one thing in agreement with you is he doesn't apologize, and you would maybe expect that in a reconciliation scene. Or maybe not. Maybe it's actually sensible to sometimes not dig up the past. Maybe it's sensible to say, "Don't worry, I'll catch up with you," and then quietly slip away. I don't know if I read it as he's never changed his ways and he's just the old trickster he always was. I think he has changed, actually, by whether the wrestling or the bowing down, the action of doing it. And I think there is some wisdom in a reconciliation, just not going too deep to the heart of things.
But he says, doesn't he, to Esau, it was like seeing the face of God.
Yeah.
That's quite a compliment.
Is it? Again, I'm not sure that's so obvious. I really take Miriam's point well, which is, we don't really know how to read Jacob's motivations. They're famously quite opaque. And he is a trickster, but he does change and develop, and he's learned from his uncle who tricked him, that actually he can't just get what he wants through deceit. But there's something strange to me about this, which I don't think we've mentioned, although we did hint at it in Miriam's introduction, which is the night before, he had this transformative experience. He wrestled with a stranger who some in our tradition say it's an angel, some say it's God, some say it's actually his brother in disguise, whoever it might be. It's a confrontation. And his name is changed, which is always, in the Hebrew Bible, someone's name gets changed, big flashing klaxon that like this is significant. His name is changed to Yisrael, which of course is hugely significant to us, but it's not used here. The next morning, he goes back to being Jacob. Something has been incompletely transformed. And it's interesting to me as a result that he says it's like looking at God, because if you took the perhaps marginal opinion that he wrestled with God in some fashion the night before, some kind of spiritual wrestling out on the riverbank, then maybe he's getting reminded, he's kind of caught in between. He's seeing that face and going, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be more than Jacob. I'm supposed to be Yisrael. I'm supposed to be someone better. But he doesn't quite rise to that if it is the case. It feels like we're getting a window into his internal conflict more than seeing the transformation completed.
Catherine?
Well, I'm just really fascinated by all of that. So thank you very much. And the wrestling the night before has been interpreted in ages since, hasn't it, as wrestling with God. So it was just that to mention that again on meeting his brother, it would seem beyond cynical if that's just some sort of trick on his part. But it seemed to me the text was saying there was something extraordinary in that meeting. Just maybe that it happened, even if it wasn't a fully recreative of their relationship.
Well, I was just going to say, how often can we actually tell what the other person thinks through their body language? And I think that, for me, describes what's actually going on. And so less of the talk, but more of, his behavior and his body language, and that's communicating something of his sincerity, I think. So I'm not cynical.
Ali, do you want to pick up on your thought? You chose my Lord's favour.
Yes. So am I correct that this is Jacob telling Esau that? Yes. So there seems to be a lot of blessing if you do reconciliate. So that's something to be appreciated. And, even in our tradition, if there's a dispute and you cut off your relations, then your prayers won't be answered. So, and also there's something important about that face-to-face interaction, and building relationships take time, and the first step is to meet each other. So that's probably why I chose that one. Yes.
I do actually, I never questioned it before you asked who's saying that, but it is actually ambiguous who's speaking. I think probably the most obvious reading is that Jacob says to gain my Lord's favour. But there is a potential reading that when he, whoever he is, says, what do you mean by all this company which I've met? It's actually Jacob asking Esau, who were those 400 men who came ahead looking an awful lot like an army? Mm-hmm. And then Esau maybe is also tricky and says, oh no, they were just the welcome party. They weren't soldiers at all. So I think there is an ambiguity there. I'm really glad you pointed that out.
Esau seems like the one, again, the text, who's more affected. Like he runs,
he's the one crying.
He runs to him, throws himself on. I mean, maybe this is just theatrics too. I'm not that cynical, but it feels, I guess, again, I might be psychoanalyzing the text, which we sort of, it's fun to do and maybe not the most responsible way to do it, at least from a Christian point of view. But yeah, he feels affected to me, like in a good way. Kisses him. They weep, not just Esau. But
Esau's always been the more emotional of the two brothers, right? We saw that in the incident that precipitated this whole thing. And when you read, I mean, it's always really difficult actually for me to read Esau crying out, saying, how unfair is this? Don't you have a blessing left for me, Father? It's like, it really is, it's gutting because he didn't do anything wrong.
No.
But it does set up really powerfully, then, this text, the potential of reconciliation, both in terms of risk. is that a welcome party or is it an army?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, you know,
Important difference.
but it also shows the potential for a family being reconciled. It's wonderfully, it really sets that out well, doesn't it?
Well, commentators say that even the kiss was ambiguous, that the kiss was a little bit of a bite. Yeah.
These commentators are wonderful.
Yeah.
They're very harsh on Esau.
They get very fanciful.
I was going to ask, we were talking earlier about Paul the Apostle in the Christian text, who is famously experiences this conversion and sees his own sin, sees his own complicity with murder, really, and changes. I was wondering about Jacob as this trickster, as you say, Adam, and he is he is Israel, and the 12 tribes come from him. So what is that? Is the presence of a flawed person who is the father of the 12 tribes, is that important in the text, like that he is the flawed one? Or is that that's a question.
I mean, Genesis definitely is a naturalistic text when it comes to human characters. They are real people. They are complicated. They make mistakes. It's equally telling us what not to do by describing the behavior of our ancestors as it is what to do. In terms of Jacob's transformation, I think he does. It's not quite finished now, right? There's more to the story. Later, some of his sons behave very badly, and he has to reckon with the fact that he doesn't actually support their deceit. And he gets really angry. And it's interesting to see Jacob on the other side of that equation. Throughout his life, he's in all these relationships with people where he has to learn not to use people. He has to learn to see people as people. And he doesn't learn it in a straightforward way, nor overnight. But this is part of that journey, is him trying to figure out what the relationship is with Esau. I think to say, our ancestor, our namesake, is someone who's flawed and complicated is actually really good, because in my mind, when cultures have heroes who stand in this pedestal of romantic ideation, who have no flaws, who are, totally unable to be questioned, it leads to a real breaking point. Whereas Jacob, we can criticize, right? And we do. We're comfortable criticizing him and also appreciating him. It's both.
There is another read, a more traditional one, that everything he did was justified.
Yeah.
Everything was because of that prophecy and acting out that prophecy.
Yeah.
So I think we need to hold these in tension.
Just slight bit of disagreement. We would never speak about the prophets in the manner that is being spoken about.
Interesting.
For us, we do hold them up as on the pedestal, but also masum, being innocent.
Being innocent. Is that what you said?
Yeah, yeah. So we honor them, and so it's a slight disagreement there in the way we look at them.
Is Esau honored?
I don't know about Esau, but certainly Jacob is.
Yeah, okay. I want to, just a view of time, come to Miriam's chosen phrase where you said, built a house.
Yeah.
Why did you pick out on that?
Well, it's based on the fact that for those 20 years, he's never had a home of his own. And he's actually never really had a home of his own. He ran away from his childhood house. He was a kind of pretty abused guest of Laban, and now he's on the run again. And so I kind of feel happy for him that he's got his own house now.
This is Jacob we're talking.
Jacob, yeah. And I read all of his actions in the context of this is a scared child who's never really had agency of his own.
Okay, some sympathy there.
So generous. You're so generous. He's not a child anymore.
And you're the cynic.
But that goes back to everyone has their burden that they carry.
Yeah.
And until you know that burden, you can't really understand motives and
I think I am a cynic in the sense of, you're right, but I guess what I miss in this text, and there's more to the story, is for me, change is about taking responsibility. And in this text, he doesn't really seem to, Jacob. Lord knows, this is why I identify with him. I've really messed up in my life and I've used people, and I need to take responsibility for that. And through loads of therapy and lots of prayer, I have, so I guess that's what I was sort of saying. In this text, he doesn't seem to take responsibility.
Or maybe he's doing his best with a kind of incomplete toolbox. Maybe he is affected by the wrestle he had and the bowing down and the encounter. Maybe he is genuinely saying he sees God's face in his brother's face. But he's also got to take care of himself and his family and find some stability and, extricate himself into a non-conflict situation.
In terms of our subject of reconciliation, what can we learn from this? What tools are in there for finding reconciliation? Adam?
I think exactly where we started, which is, you've got to both prepare for the best and the worst, is actually a good example that he doesn't go into it with rosy tinted glasses about what might happen. He doesn't know what's going to happen. They haven't seen each other in a very long time. Last he heard, his brother wanted to kill him. And he seems to be, to his credit, and I should give him some credits. I've been a bit harsh on Jacob today.
Yes, you have.
He is interested in finding a peaceful solution. He wants to try and do that. He does that first, right? He gives the gifts first, but he also is reserved. He's aware that he's at risk. He's making himself vulnerable. He keeps his most beloved family members back, and the other ones go first. And there's something there about actually recognizing that reconciliation is a process that has ups and downs. It's not just a magic switch where you've had a conflict with someone, interpersonal or geopolitical or anything, and you just, you say the right words and everything's better. It's, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think Jacob models that actually quite well.
Okay, thanks very much. Let's turn to our reading from the Qur'an, which is found in the family of Imran, and it's Surah 3, verses 102 to 104. Now, Imam Monabar, you're going to read the Arabic, and then Trey, if you would read the English translation for us to give us a chance to find a word or phrase that we are struck by. And then it's back to Monabar to introduce the text as well after that. So off you go.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها كذلك يبين الله لكم آياته لعلكم تعتدون ولتكن منكم أمة يدعون إلى الخير ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر وأولئك هم المفلحون.
Thank you so much. And Trey, the English translation.
You who believe, be mindful of God as is his due, and make sure you devote yourselves to him to your dying moment. Hold fast to God's rope all together. Do not split into factions. Remember God's favor to you. You were enemies, and then he brought your hearts together, and you became brothers by his grace. You were about to fall into a pit of fire, and he saved you from it. In this way, God makes his revelations clear to you so that you may be rightly guided. Be a community that calls for what is good, urges what is right, and forbids what is wrong. Those who do this are the successful ones.
So we'll come to your words or phrases in a moment, but Imam, would you introduce it for us, please?
Yes, well, these verses feel especially poignant in light of the divisions and suffering that we witness in our world today. They begin with a call to mindfulness of God, a grounding invitation to live with awareness and reverence. Then comes a striking image, holding fast to the rope of God, all together, without division. It's a powerful visual. Many hands, one rope. A shared grip on something greater than ourselves. The passage then recalls a transformation. You were enemies, and he brought your hearts together. The language is intimate, almost tender. It closes with a call to become a community that calls to good, urges what is right, and resists what is harmful. It's a movement from the personal to the communal to the moral. And I wonder what it stirs in us to hear these words today.
Thank you very much. So can I go around the table again and ask for the word or phrase that you want to concentrate on? Miriam.
God's rope.
Yeah, I had a feeling that might come up. And Trey.
Honestly, that was mine too.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
mine. I think this reading does lend that very much, yeah.
Mindful of God. Taqwa.
Okay, yeah. And Adam?
Fall into a pit of fire.
Okay. Catherine?
His grace.
Yes. And Alia?
Hold fast to God's rope.
Let's start with the rope, because I think that does sort of leap out at us. Who wants to go first? Miriam?
I'd love to know what the Arabic word is and if there's anything else in the translation that you could draw out.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as I said, the taqwa part, which is about a sense of perpetual God consciousness, is really important. The rope is interpreted, certainly in the Sunni tradition, the Qur'an, the Prophet, and I think the Imams in the Shia tradition. And it has a real sense of God's grace. The rope is God's grace because He's not only sent a revelation, but He's also sent a prophet and a messenger who is the role model, who models that. And the context of this revelation is Medinan. It's in Medina. And the Aus and the Khazraj, the two tribes there, have basically been at war and conflict for a long time, and they've just completely exhausted themselves. So it's not that they've come to any kind of reconciliation, but they've exhausted themselves. And then comes the prophet, and he unifies them. So in Arabia at the time, each tribe would have had their own stories of triumph over the other, their own stories of battles and so on. And so all of that has to be kind of put behind them in order to become one community and brothers and sisters. And so that's a sort of bit of context there. But certainly in terms of the rope, this is the rope as a metaphor for the Qur'an and the Prophet and the Imams in Shia tradition. Ali, you might want to add.
Yeah, definitely. So the image of a rope shows steadfastness, that you're connected, and it's connecting to God. So how are you going to hold on to that? By following the teachings of the Quran and the Prophet. And the Shias also include the Imams. So that's the sayings, actions, and tacit approvals of all of them. But I've heard that this is also at the time when Moses came down and saw that people were worshipping the calf, the golden calf. And Moses asked Aaron, why didn't you stop them? And he sort of gives this reply that he didn't want people to split into factions. So what you've said is also true. But I've also heard it for that explanation as well. So unity is really important.
Keeping everyone together.
It's a wonderful image, isn't it? I mean, it stuck for me because it's this kind of visceral kind of thing, stuck and unable to get out of the predicament. And this rope drops down from heaven, or later we find out into the pit of fire that we're in. It's such a visual image of, it's not, I read it and I think, in this work of trying to find unity, you will need some external, it's not just going to be you bringing your best humans. There will need to be some rope from heaven,
But it's not just God's thread. It's like a rope is made up of all these fibers knitted together, and it's strong because of its twisted unity. Twisted in a good way.
Exactly. So the braids are perhaps, I thought of that, yeah. So the braids, is that what you mean? The braids of different...
Maybe that's the human aspect, knitting together.
Love that.
It's a really powerful image. And the pit of fire, I don't want to assume, but is that a kind of conception of, like the Christian conception of hell, or is it something distinct? What does it mean when it says here, you nearly fell in the pit of fire?
Pit of fire through the enmity and the hatred and the war.
Okay.
And that would have, of course, ultimately lead them to destruction.
Okay.
Because it's destruction not just here, but in the akhirah, in the next life. And so they're saved from that. And so that's what it, because there are, as we discussed in the other text, that ultimately on the day of judgment, there is accountability for the right and the harm that we might have done to others.
But is that an understanding in Islam that the pit of fire is sort of hell, eternal hell?
Well, I mean, that's definitely, yeah, absolutely. There's heaven and there's hell. And there is suffering in hell, but there's also ultimately God's forgiveness and salvation. But that's in the gift of God. And so it's really important just to kind of remember that there are the rights of God on us, and then there are rights of fellow human beings. And the rights of God freely through his grace can forgive us. Yeah. But the rights of fellow human beings who we've trespassed or harmed, they have to forgive us. If they don't, then you're not going to be forgiven.
Catherine picked up the word grace, didn't you? Which is interesting.
Yeah. Because there are links with Christians' idea of grace, and that actually a lot of this is too difficult for us to do on our own. We can only do it by being channels of God's grace. But it was really interesting what you just said about God forgives in the nature of God's nature, but do people forgive as well? And people not forgiving is a sort of hindrance to that person being fully forgiven. God's forgiven them, but can that person?
There's a tradition about day judgment, two people arguing between themselves, and they're shown paradise. And I'm just sort of, the gist of it, the tradition is that if you forgive each other, that's where you will go, paradise. But you have to forgive each other. So stop the quarreling and the dispute between yourselves. And that will lead, so forgiveness being a really important component of that.
It's fascinating that you say, I think I heard you say that even in the pit of hell, in the next life, that there still might be the rope of God that descends, and there's forgiveness even in hell. Is that what I heard you say?
Well,
God has the right to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those people who, even if you have an atom's weight of faith or iman in your heart, you will be led out of the fire back into the water of life, or the river of life. And then, of course, we have a long tradition of the intercession of the prophets, and then the prophet himself.
Yeah. So we're talking about justice and reconciliation, and I think Christians also have a sense. Some Christians, quite diverse, like Jews and Muslims, but sort of the sense that even after death, on the day of judgment, or on the time when we have to be accountable for our lives, that there is grace even there. So even it's not just to the point of death that we are open to God's grace, even post-death. But I do wonder about this reconciliation. If there's not some future judgment or justice, if we aren't held accountable as individuals or as societies for the stuff that we have done wrong, what does it mean to trust God? If there's no final gracious reckoning, if there's no final sense of someone is going to be responsible for, that's not us, for making it all right.
I want to return to the rope, because Alia picks up on that as well. And I think we've slightly embellished the text here, because we've talked about the rope being lowered into the pit of fire. It doesn't actually mention that at all.
No. Well,
does it?
A reflection on what Alia said. Mentioning about the golden calf was really interesting to me, because, and you said that in the Islamic understanding, Aaron doesn't get rid of it because he sees it's binding people together. It's a kind of rope. And it's just interesting to me that religion can be a rope for good, and it can be a rope for bad. And sometimes that knitting together between people can actually be around a false idol or something that leads to real harm. And so I just wanted to throw that idea out there.
Right. Yes.
Why did you pick on rope as your
on rope? Because it an illusion of strength. You look at a rope that somebody's holding the other end, and here are you trying to go up, and it's kind of an upward, because it's God's rope. It can only be vertical. And just going back to previous discussions about the animals and the creatures, man as the only creature with a vertical backbone, whereas all the other animals have a horizontal backbone. So it's just that you're vertically going upwards, and one aspires to reach.
So we are the rope in some ways.
Yes, that's right. We are the reflection of try to be God's attributes and be godlike. And mercy, like God, we have a tradition that God has written mercy upon himself. So in terms of reconciliation, forgiveness plays a huge role. And if we look at today's leaders, for example, Nelson Mandela, for example, forgave the people who mistreated him, and just looking at these values to reflect on and imbibe, really.
It's very interesting that it's seen that we need some kind of grace from God in order to reconcile. That on our own, our natural state is factions and enemies. And it's only because of God's favour that we could get over it. It feels in contrast to the Hebrew Bible text, where it's really down to the humans to, knock their heads together and sort themselves out.
I used to think grace was a peculiarly Christian phrase, but it's obviously important to Islam anyway.
Oh, yes.
And Judaism.
Yeah.
Although
I think listening to
loving kindness.
Oh, for sure. I think listening to our Muslim and Christian colleagues today and reflecting on how much Judaism puts it on us as humans to be kind of responsible for ourselves.
There really isn't a notion of grace in this sense of something which is given freely from above. God forgives because there's a sense of God being merciful, and that's certainly shared. But there's a real sense that if we've done something wrong, we have to make it right.
And we have free will to go and make the right choices.
Yeah, and if we don't, that's on us.
But you can't make it right completely, right? There's I remember an old tale, well, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to tell a story, but there are some things you can't make right. So is that just ours to bear? The fact that we sometimes wound people so deeply individually or as institutions, organizations, that it can't be repaired.
There are things, I suppose, only God can forgive that other people aren't capable of doing. And that's, in the Jewish tradition, the idea of Yom Kippur and the concept of kapara, kind of absolution. But the important difference is there's not really a concept of sin in the same way. Certainly not of an embedded, original, innate sense of sin. People they start out as a free choice, right? They start out at zero, and they have the ability to choose which path they go down. And as a result, it's pretty easy to hold them accountable because nothing's stopping them or preventing them or pulling them. The idea of a rope pulling them it struck me. There's a common misconception when we translate Hebrew, the word tikva, which is used a lot actually in the Psalms, of kaveh, to hope for something, as it's translated in King James. It's actually the word for rope. Tikva and kaveh is about a rope, right? When you say hope on God, it doesn't mean sit around and wait for the best. It means grab this thing and twist it, right? It's that action of twisting that makes a rope, that makes it strong. It's a very active sort of thing. And it strikes me as very similar here, that you could see this, that when hold fast to God's rope is not a passive thing where you're just waiting around for grace to descend upon you. You got to do something. You got to grab it, right? And if you don't, you're going to miss it.
Absolutely. It comes back to the holding on to the rope, and then relates finally towards the end about action. So it's not just as you rightly say, a passive rope, but it's an active rope, which means you're actively seeking out the good, and you're actively seeking to protect from the harm. So it's a promotion of, what is good for the community, for the common good, and stopping harm. And hence you're demonstrating you're holding on to that rope of God.
Okay. Just on the time, the word you picked out was mindful, Oliver. Do you want to just focus in on that?
For me, it's a heart to explain Islam. It's the heart of the religion, and it's a viewpoint, and that is taqwa really is to nurture, instill, cultivate a deep sense of God consciousness. That when we act in the full awareness of that God is watching us, that we will act in a different way. And so it's to cultivate that sense of taqwa, and that's what it begins with. And in fact, that first verse is something I would recite in the sermon for the marriage. And so that's the foundation. From it flows, holding on to the rope of God. These are means, as it were, that to enable us to reach the state of God, a consciousness or being aware of God at every moment. And that's what we aspire to. We're not going to get there, but potentially that's where we aim to be, that everything, all our action, all that we do will be grounded in the full awareness that God is ever watchful upon us and that we're in the presence of God at all times, because God is watching us everywhere. And so that should help us to be better Muslims, better human beings, better people in society.
So finally, to our Christian text, which is taken from the New Testament. We don't tend to read the passage in Greek, since most Christians don't use Greek in regular worship. So, Rabbi Adam, will you read the English translation so that we can select a word or phrase? And then, Catherine, will you give your short introduction? So, Adam, over to you.
Luke 6, verses 27 to 36. But I say to you that listen, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you, and if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful.
Okay, I'll come to your words or phrases in a moment. Catherine, would you set the text in context?
Introducing this passage from St. Luke's Gospel, I feel I may need an oxygen canister with me because it goes really deep and takes us indeed to the heart of the Lord's Prayer as Christians. I've loved and wrestled with this text for the last 50 years. This is from the Sermon on the Plain, which is paralleled with the Sermon on the Mount in St. Matthew's Gospel, full of profound spiritual challenge and apparent paradox. Jesus is in the midst of his public ministry and his teaching and his healing people and has attracted a great crowd. He's gone to the top of a mountain to pray and has chosen his 12 disciples, and now he comes down. So there's a kind of Moses parallel going on there. He comes down and he teaches. And the golden rule pops up in this part of our teaching that is shared by all the major religions. Do unto others as you would have them do to you. So this passage sets out Jesus' teaching about love and forgiveness. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. But surely this seems impossible against human nature. And what about justice? What about pain and hurt? Yet this is the way and the pattern that Christians believe Jesus sets himself in his own life. This is the way of life that holds the promise of reconciliation and recreation with other people, with oneself, and with God. But requires a lot of giving up, a lot of letting go. And what about justice? I look forward to us reasoning about this together.
Thank you very much. Can I go around the table again and ask for the word that or phrase that leapt out? Can I start with you, Trey?
Expecting nothing in return.
Okay, yeah, and Monova.
Listen.
Mm-hmm. And Adam?
What credit is that to you?
Yeah, and Catherine?
I've done it again. Listen.
Okay. And Alia?
Do to others as you would have them do to you.
And Miriam?
If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also.
All right, nice. Yeah. So let's start with listen, shall we? Then why did we pick up on listen? I wonder if it's for the same reason. One of our.
Well, listen is, I think, so critical to establishing a good relationship. And if we're going to reconcile, we have to listen actively. And I often give that advice to young couples getting married, that really if you want this relationship to work, you're going to have to listen to each other and not talk at the same time.